Hello my dear friend, a very warm welcome to all of you. In this session we are going to discuss the top 10 probable questions for your upcoming INI-CET exams and some important discussions around those questions which can be asked. So the first question is regarding indicators of malaria, and they are asking how we measure the morbidity due to malaria cases. Okay, so these are the four common indicators, and this one indicator has also been asked in recent MCI exam, infant parasite rate. This infant parasite rate, it tells you about the recent spread of malaria. It is the most sensitive indicator for telling you the recent spread of malaria. Most sensitive indicator for recent spread of malaria in the community. How we measure it? So we take 100 children, and out of those 100 children, how many less than one children have parasite in their blood? That tells us the infant parasite rate. It simply means the percentage children having parasite in their blood, and a percentage infant less than 1 year having parasite in their blood. So it is the most sensitive indicator of recent spread of malaria. Now, what is proportional case rate? Proportional case rate simply means that out of, let's say, 100 cases coming to hospital, how many are having malaria? 100 cases coming to hospital, how many have malaria? Okay, so let's say out of 100 cases coming to hospital, if 20 have malaria, it means that malaria is a very common disease causing illness in that area. So if we want to understand the morbidity due to malaria, then the answer to it will be proportional case rate. And proportional case rate simply means how many malaria cases are there out of total 100 cases. And we all know infant parasite incidence rate, API, is the best indicator of impact of malaria control program, and it also tells us about incidence, about new cases. Okay, but recent transmission occur in less than 1 year children. So infant parasite tells about recent transmission, and it tells about incidence and impact of malaria control program. And we all should definitely remember that if API is more than 1 per 1000, then state belong to intensive control phase, and then state should get priority. It is an intensive control phase. Okay, now what is annual blood examination rate? It simply tells us whether work is happening or not at ground level. Okay, so it tells about operational efficiency of malaria control program. And how it tells about operational efficiency? Because it tells us simply how many slides are made, number of slide made from total population, like, because if we are making slide, it means work is happening. So ABER tells us whether work is happening or not by number of slide from malaria cases out of total population into 100. And I hope you all know what is API. API means how many confirmed cases are there. Okay, number of confirmed cases of malaria divided by total population, but this time we multiply by 1000. Okay, now one more indicator they can ask, that is spleen rate. So spleen rate simply means that out of 100 children between 2 to 10 year children, how many children have spleen, enlarged spleen? Okay, enlarged spleen means more than 2 centimeter below the costophrenic this costal margin. Below 2 centimeter costal margin is enlarged spleen. So out of 100 children, how many have enlarged spleen? So what does the spleen rate tells us? Spleen rate tells us the endemicity of malaria, whether the malaria is endemic in that population or not. Because if malaria is endemic, then a larger percentage of children will have enlarged spleen. Okay, 2 to 10 year children having enlarged spleen. Okay, so these are some of the indicators which we have to remember with their uses. But in one of the previous NEET exam, they have asked some of the question from vector indices which we measure about mosquito. So what is how they can ask from the vector indices means they are talking about quantitative assessment of malaria, that in which area malaria is common and how much it is common. So quantitative assessment of malaria, or the composite epidemiological picture about mosquito and about transmission if we want to get, then we use vector indices. And in vector indices, first is human blood index. Human blood index means that out of, let's say, 100 human, how many have parasite in their blood. That is human blood index. Okay, percentage of mosquito, of course female Anopheles mosquito, percentage of mosquito having human blood, because this time we are measuring everything regarding mosquitoes, है ना? So how many mosquito have human blood, that is human blood index. Now next thing is this IR is inoculation rate. Inoculation rate simply means that how many human are inoculated with sporozoite or are inoculated with parasite. So it is dependent on two things. First is man biting rate. Man biting rate means if a person is sitting without cloth and we are observing how many mosquito is biting that person in a fixed period of time, that is man biting rate, that how much mosquito bite a person. And sporozoite rate simply means that how many mosquito have sporozoite in their body. Okay, so percentage of mosquito having sporozoite, because we all know that sporozoite is the stage which enters into human and gametocyte is taken away from human. That's why vaccine against sporozoite prevent infection and vaccine against gametocyte prevent transmission. Okay, so they can also ask what is the percentage of mosquito having sporozoite, that is sporozoite rate. Remember, inoculation rate is equal to man biting rate into sporozoite rate, and these are the vector indices. Okay, now one more thing I want to tell you here important is they can give you a blood peripheral smear picture and they can ask you how to differentiate between Vivax and Plasmodium falciparum. So we all know that the gametocyte of Plasmodium falciparum, this is which sept? This is banana sept, है ना? So if on the peripheral smear you find an RBC like this, and from this RBC there is this banana sept gametocyte, let's say, and this is the RBC and this is the banana sept gametocyte. So this is falciparum. But in case of Plasmodium vivax, one thing is that if you look at the gametocyte of Plasmodium vivax, it will be something like this. There will be oval gametocyte which is completely filling it, है ना, like this. This type of gametocyte will be in Plasmodium vivax. It's like a rugby ball, and like it's like a rugby ball appearance will be there, and it is completely filling it. So if you find this type of gametocyte, this is Plasmodium vivax. Moreover, the ring which is formed in Plasmodium vivax is more complete ring which is there, and the gametocyte looks like this. Okay, now let's come to the next question, which is about classification of blindness according to visual acuity, because there are two classifications which is given in the book and we need to revise. First is in the Park latest edition they have given mild low vision is something in which there is less than 6/12. Then we have moderate low vision which is less than 6/18. Then we have severe low vision which is less than 6/60. And last is we have blindness simple, and blindness is less than 3/60. Okay, WHO and India both have the same definition. So remember, mild, moderate, severe, 12, 18, 60. Okay, then blindness. Now this blindness is something less than 3/60 is something which correlate with social blindness. Okay, whenever it is less than 3/60, that is social blindness. And just above social blindness we have economical blindness. Okay, economical blindness. Okay, so economical blindness is something which will range between 6/60 to 3/60. That is economical blindness. And above economical blindness we have low vision. This was the older classification, but they can ask question from this part also. Low vision means 6 by 18 to 6 by 60. Okay, and after social blindness we have manifest blindness and absolute blindness. I will also tell you the way to remember it after discussing it. And manifest blindness means those who have less than 3 by 60 to 1 by 60 is social blindness. If someone is having less than 1 by 60, that is manifest blindness. But in manifest blindness, perception of light is present. If you take the mobile light and or torch light from one side, patient can tell that light is coming from this direction. So perception of light is present in manifest blindness. But when it comes to absolute blindness means one in which there is no perception of light. So how to remember it? Very simple. We can remember it by a very simple mnemonic, LESMA. Okay, LESMA, choti ma, LESMA. L for low vision, which start from 6 by 18 in Indian classification. And remember, mild low vision start from 6 by 12. This is low vision 6 by 18. Economical blindness 6 by 60. Remember, social blindness, LESMA, the middle one S corresponds to the blindness corresponds to less than 3 by 60. So if you remember that social blindness is 3 by 60, I think you can tell the other factors also. And manifest blindness is when perception of light is present. Absolute blindness when perception of light is absent. Okay, so please remember the classification, both of this classification. Second thing they can ask is that the school health program which we have comes under which of the following? Sub-center, PHC, CSC or something. So remember please that the school health program which we have comes under vision center. And where will you find the vision center? School health program comes, vision center is present at PHC. So school health program come under vision center, which comes under PHC. Because I hope you remember the pyramid which we draw in NPCB program Vision 2020. First is our vision center, then is our service center, then is our training center, then is center of excellence, and then is apex center, which is Rajendra Prasad Ophthalmic Research Center at AIIMS. So vision center is 20,000 and it is at PHC. And then we keep on decreasing 10 for service center, which is 2000 at CHC or district hospital. Then training center is 200 and center of excellence is 20 and apex center is 1. So remember, school health program comes under vision center. Now what are the things in a school health program? That is also important to remember. First of all, we give minus desk in which the leg can go below the desk so that we need not to bend. Like this desk I am writing is minus desk. Second thing they say is there should be less than or equal to 40 student per class, and there should be 1 urinal per 60 student, and there should be 1 latrine per 100 student. The lights should enter from left side of the room, lights from left side of room, and around 25% area of room should have door and window. 25% area made up of door and window in the room. So these are the important points of a school health program. And recently in a school health program we are also making students and teacher volunteers which can train other students in yoga, meditation and other thing. So this is also a new thing which we are doing in a school health program. So remember these points from NPCB and VII program which they are asking. Now let's come to different type of question from cohort study. They have given the risk ratio, and the risk ratio is 0.86. So what does this 0.86 means? 0.86 means that there is 14% decrease, as compared to 100 there is 14% decrease. Okay, wherever there is 0.86 means 14% decrease, 0.66 means 34% decrease. Like that you have to interpret the odds ratio and relative risk. So there is 14% decrease when we compare tea consumption. Okay, so what they are saying is that diabetes is associated with tea or not. And when they did the study, they found that those who drink tea, they have 14% less chance of diabetes. and relative risk 0.46. What does 0.46 means? We all know that if relative risk is less than 1, it means there is protective association, and it is protecting it. So if relative risk is 0.86, it is less than 1, it means protective. So the more tea you drink, the less diabetes will be there, and it is protective, going in the opposite direction. So it means that the tea drinkers have a lower risk of developing diabetes. Okay, this statement seems to be correct, but we all know that we cannot be sure about it just basis on relative risk. We also need p-value and confidence interval, or at least one out of these two is also needed to decide whether this result is significant or this result came just by chance. So because they have not given p-value and confidence interval, so we cannot say whether it is correct result or it came randomly just by chance. So here, based on the information given, we cannot tell if the observed difference in difference risk in the result of chance. Actually, due to, it can never happen that due to drinking tea, your diabetes will decrease. It is something which anyway look like a spurious association, which looks like a wrong association, which came out randomly. So anyway, they have not given the data of p-value and confidence interval, and we need 2 out of these 3. At least out of 1, relative risk, confidence interval and p-value, at least 2 things should be given to decide whether the data is significant or not. And because only one thing, relative risk, is given, so we cannot decide whether it is actually present or it is just by chance that we are getting that those who drink tea have less diabetes. Okay, and I hope you remember that in one of the last exam they have given 2 study example with relative risk 0.5 and relative risk 2, and they ask you how to plot it. So whenever we plot it, there is only one plot which can be true. We start with relative risk 1, because relative risk 1 means no association, and then though that one with 0.5 will go in the negative direction, because 0.5 means negative association, and the one with 2 goes in this direction because 2 means positive association, and always we start with 1. So this is the correct graph representing it. Now we also have to discuss the association between p-value and confidence interval, based on which we decide whether the study is significant or not. And we all know that usually we assume that p-value should be less than 0.05 or equal to 0.05, then the study is significant. And because what is p-value? They can ask the definition sometime. P-value is the probability of getting a significant result wrongly, of getting a significant result by chance. Significant result by chance. And whatever comes by chance can be wrong. Okay. So what is the probability of getting a significant result wrongly? That is p-value. Okay. I hope you understand the meaning of p-value. Let's say a guy is there and a girl looked at the guy. Now the guy is very happy and excited that the girl is looking at me, and he think that there is something significant. Okay, so he think that, okay, there is, let's say, 94% chance that the girl is interested in me and 6% chance that he is not interested. Okay, so now p-value will tell us that how many times it is probable that he is feeling some positive vibe wrongly, and the girl is not giving the vibe but he is feeling it. So suppose the p-value is, let's say, 0.06. So 0.06 means this guy in 6% of cases, 6% time, he is getting the positive vibe when the girl doesn't mean anything, and when the girl just look at him randomly, he get the positive vibe. So similarly, for any study, if p-value is 0.06, it means 6% time he feel excited, he feels significant, when in reality it is not significant. In reality, the girl just looked for some other reason and he thought he is looking at him, and so in reality it is wrongly came, or it just occurred by chance, wrongly or by chance occurred. Okay, why this definition is important? Because this is also the definition of alpha error. Remember this point, that p-value and alpha error both have almost same meaning. Both means acting over smartly when you try to fool other people. For example, when Baba Ramdev said that Coronil can treat corona, and he gave a very wrong type of study result, and the study has a lot of problem in that. But what Baba Ramdev is trying to do, he is trying to act over smartly. He is trying to sell Coronil by saying that it is significant. So what is alpha error? Alpha error means if any scientist or researcher say that his drug is useful when in reality it is not useful, that is alpha error. And similar case is happening with this guy also in our story. Actually the girl is not looking significantly, but he is getting excited. So the same thing is happening with Baba Ramdev story also, that actually Coronil is not treating corona, but Baba Ramdev is getting excited. So that is the concept of p-value, alpha error, and the meaning of all these terms. P-value and alpha error both means acting over smartly. Both means what is the probability of getting excited, getting significant, when actually it just occurred by chance. Okay, so remember the meaning of it, and I hope you understand here why the answer C is more better, because they have not given p-value and confidence interval. Okay, now let's come choose other type of question. A vaccine that is biologically protective but not accepted by the public has. So biologically protective means it has high efficacy, and not accepted by the public means it has low effectiveness. So they can ask the question regarding efficacy and effectiveness. What is the difference between them? And because we know that there is data regarding Sputnik, Covishield, and Covaxin, and Johnson and Johnson, Pfizer, Moderna, everyone has given the efficacy. What does this efficacy means? Suppose Sputnik has an efficacy of around 91.6, Covishield has around 72%, and Covaxin has around 78%. So if 70% is the efficacy, it means that people who will take the vaccine, they have 78% less chance of developing fever or getting hospitalized as compared to those who did not take vaccine. Okay, so it simply means that vaccine taker, those who take vaccine taker have 78% less chance of hospitalization or of developing fever, of developing COVID-19, of hospitalization or fever, as compared to those who did not take it, as compared to non-taker, okay, as compared to non-vaccinated. So this efficacy data we use to compare the vaccine, but we should not use it, because efficacy data depends on in which month the research for vaccine has been done. For example, when there is in USA, when the cases was less during the month of July, August in 2020, then Pfizer and Moderna did the research, and both of these mRNA vaccine, they found around 95% efficacy. But when Johnson and Johnson did the research, at that time the cases was rising in America, so they found efficacy of only 66%. Okay, and I hope you know Johnson and Johnson is a viral vector vaccine, just like Covishield. So Covishield and Johnson are viral vector vaccine, and both of which have been found to be associated with clotting abnormality. Clotting abnormality is a side effect which is more common in viral vector vaccine, and Sputnik is also a viral vector vaccine. So what is the difference between Sputnik and Covishield? That can also be asked. Remember, Sputnik uses two different viral vector in 2 doses. There are 2 different viral vector in 2 doses. Okay, one is recombinant adenovirus 5, other is recombinant adenovirus 26. So these 2 different viral vector are given in Sputnik at a gap of 21 days. But in case of Covishield, it has same viral vector. Of course, both of these viral vector in Sputnik and Covishield, both of them, they carry the mRNA for spike protein. But the difference is that in Covishield, both the adenovirus or chimpanzee adenovirus, they are same. But in case of Sputnik, the two viral vector are different. Okay, so remember, Covishield has same viral vector. And we all know that nowadays government guidelines say that the vaccine should be given at a gap of 12 to 16 weeks, sorry for the cough, 12 to 16 week. Okay, so remember, efficacy means what is the percentage prevention as compared to those who are unvaccinated, and effectiveness means how effective is it when it is given to general public, not in lab condition. We measure efficacy in stage 2 of clinical trial. Stage 2 clinical trial tells us about efficacy because it is in a closed condition, environmental or lab condition. Effectiveness we get from stage 4 clinical trial. Okay, so effectiveness is something which comes after it is marketed. So they can ask this question that after which phase the vaccine is marketed. So ideally after phase 3 vaccine introduced to market, vaccine comes to market after phase 3, but of course it has not happened with Covaxin. It was introduced just after second phase. Okay, but we should ideally introduce vaccine after phase 3, and that is phase 4 when we know the effectiveness. That is the reality. Okay, one more point is that if they ask the question regarding biosafety of lab, remember that if we are doing RT-PCR or any lab investigation, biosafety level 2 is sufficient for doing those investigation. If we are isolating virus to prepare vaccine, let's say vaccine preparation, they are asking in which level, or they ask isolation of virus occur in which level safety of lab, then the answer is biosafety level 3. Okay, and they have also asked this question that what is the use of antibody detection in COVID-19 test. So antibody test tells us about past asymptomatic infection. Okay, and of course RT-PCR is still presently the investigation of choice to detect COVID-19. Okay, so remember this point. And if they ask that in a vaccine trial, okay, we should not look at efficacy data, it is not so important. Then what is the most important data for a vaccine trial? Remember, the most important data is not efficacy or effectiveness, it is safety of vaccine. How many people got killed in the vaccine trial, or how many developed side effect, that is the most important. So the most important data is safety data. Remember, side effect or safety data is most important for any vaccine. Okay, now let's come to the next question. Which of the following indicator tells about average number of girl child per female if current trend in fertility persists? So remember, if they use the word mortality, that is NRR, because NRR simply means girl child minus those who died divided by number of female. I will explain it with an example. So if they use the word mortality, that is NRR. But if they are asking girl child per female considering fertility, that is GRR. And if they ask average number of child per female, average number of child per female, that is total fertility rate. And if they made one small change and they ask average number of child per 1000 female, then it will be general fertility rate. Okay, general fertility rate and TFR is almost same, only per 1000 is used in general fertility rate. Okay, so the correct answer is GRR. There is an association between GRR and TFR. I hope you all know that GRR is half of TFR. And what is the target TFR which we should achieve? In our National Health Policy 2017, they have said that we are planning to achieve a TFR of 2.1. Okay, and what should be our target NRR? If NRR is equal to 1, it means per couple we have one girl child who is surviving. So this is our target NRR, because if we achieve NRR is equal to 1, then it means that there is two child per couple. Okay, hum do hamare do, because there is one girl child and naturally girls and boys child are equal. So if NRR become equal to 1, it means per couple will have approximately one male child, one female child. Okay, and it also means that we are able to give contraceptive to 60% couple. Only then the NRR will be equal to 1, because in a village, suppose there are 100 couple. So out of 100 couple, not every couple want to use contraceptive. Some want to have children, some had already went through sterilization. So we cannot give contraceptive to 100%. But if we give contraceptive to only 60%, then unwanted children will not be produced. And on an average, the community will have 2 child per couple. And this is an observation. It has been found that we have to reach TFR of 2.1, NRR of 1, and to reach NRR of 1, we need to give contraceptive to around 60% couple. Currently, India is giving contraceptive to around 54% of couple. So we have to increase it to 60%. Okay, and of course, you know that if net reproduction rate is more than 1, it means population is increasing, expanding. If net reproduction rate is less than 1, it means population is declining. And if it is equal to 1, that means we are 2 people in a couple are producing 2 children. So we are replacing ourselves. So if NRR is equal to 1, then population is stable. Okay, I hope you need not to have an example, but still, suppose in a tribal female village there is 20 couple. 20 couple means there is 20 female, because each couple usually have one female, and suppose they gave birth to 23 boys and 22 girls, out of which let's say one boy died and one girl died. Okay, so what will be the TFR, total fertility rate? Try to tell it yourself. Total fertility rate will be total children, 23 plus 22, that means 45 by 20. So it will come out 2.2, more than the target of 2.1. Now what will be the gross reproduction rate? Gross reproduction rate means only girl child. So 22 by 20. So it will be 1.1. And what will be the net reproduction rate? This time we will subtract those girls who died before becoming 15-year-old. Girl who died before becoming reproductive. So we will subtract that. So 22 minus 1 by 20. So it will be 1.05 net reproduction rate. Okay, so like that we prepare. Remember, fertility is GRR, mortality is NRR, and per female average number of child is TFR. Per 1000 female it is GFR. Now next question is about RCT, and they are saying that what is the reason why RCT is so good? Okay, so let's go the option one by one. Option D say that the study participants are volunteer and therefore motivated to take part, so RCT is good. No, it's not important. It's not the main point, because if volunteers are there, it is itself a problem, and it can lead to volunteer bias. What is volunteer bias? Volunteer bias and Bergsonian bias, remember, both are example of selection bias. So when we are selecting people and we are doing some mistake, that is the selection bias. And volunteer bias, I hope you know that suppose in HIV vaccine trial we are only putting young people, so the result will come that HIV vaccine is very good. Why? Because we have taken volunteer whose immune system was good, not due to vaccine. So we will get whole wrong result if we select volunteer. Okay, so volunteer bias and Bergsonian bias is type of selection bias, and Bergsonian bias is also known as hospital rate admission bias. Okay, now the exposure level and the outcome are measured at the same time. Of course, never. In RCT and cohort, we start with exposure and go towards outcome. Both in RCT and cohort we do the same. So we cannot measure it at the same time. We measure the outcome in future. Okay. Now option B. So option C is also wrong because they do not occur at the same time. Option B, it is easier to measure the outcome variable with great precision in randomized controlled trial. This is a correct thing. That we can measure the outcome variable with great precision. This type is correct. But it is not easy to do. It is not easy to do. Why it is not easy? Because in RCT, we have to keep the participant under our observation. And we have to, probably in developed country, they have to pay the participant also. And they have to be randomly allocated, so they have to be decided before starting a study. So it all makes RCT more difficult than cohort. And cohort is more difficult than case control. Okay, so remember, suppose they ask this question that there is a association between obesity and, let's say, pizza intake. Okay, that people who eat pizza, they are more obese. Suppose some researcher thought it. And suppose they ask that a study was done in which obese and non-obese are compared about their pizza intake. Obese and non-obese are asked about pizza intake. So this type of study is something which is definitely case control. Why it is case control? Because we are starting with obese and non-obese. Obese and non-obese means disease and non-disease. One is disease, one is non-disease. So whenever we start with disease and non-disease in the beginning, that is case control. But suppose I change this study and I started with a study was done in which a student who eat pizza is followed and compared with those who don't eat pizza. So here, of course, they have two groups. One group in which exposure is present, one group in which exposure is absent. So if they are starting with exposure without random allocation, that is cohort. So cohort start with exposure, case control with disease. Please remember it. This type of questions are very common in the recent exams. So it is not easier. That's why option B is also wrong. Let's come to the last option, option A. What is the advantage of RCT? When the participants are randomized, many characteristic, possibly confounding factor, are likely to be evenly distributed. This is the main advantage of RCT, that we are doing random allocation so we can distribute the participant. So if we want to know the effect of pizza on obesity, and in the beginning we randomly allocate the student, so any one group can have like the obese student will be equally distributed in the two group. So the obesity or the age and other confounder will go away. So remember this point. This is again another type of question, that RCT, it removes selection bias. First of all, it removes selection bias because now the participants are equally allocated. Second thing is that this randomization which we do in it, so this randomization, it decreases both known and unknown confounder. If we do not know about the confounder also, that is also equally distributed. So randomization decreases both known and unknown confounder. Okay, and if it is a matching, because one other way of removing selection bias is when we match the participant and we take equal type of participant. So if it is matching, then matching removes or decreases only known confounder. So which one is better, matching or randomization? Of course randomization is better because it removes both known and unknown confounder. And we also do blinding in RCT. So this blinding, it removes selection bias. It removes or decreases selection bias, because if we are blind, then we cannot be biased. So it decreases the bias, but it does not remove confounder. Remember, blinding does not remove confounder. Confounder is removed by randomization when we are randomly allocating them, and matching removes known confounder. Okay, so and I hope what is confounder. Confounder is something which is related unequally to both exposure and outcome. Okay, that is a confounder which is related unequally to both exposure and outcome. For example, let's say I am taking a study between cigarette consumption and MI, and it has been found that exercise is related to cigarette consumption, because it has been found that people who exercise more, they smoke less. So exercise is related to cigarette, and of course exercise decreases the chance of MI also. So exercise is a confounder because it is related to both cigarette consumption and heart attack, because it is unequally related to both exposure and outcome. Here exposure is cigarette consumption and MI is the outcome. Okay, so that is a confounder which is related to both. And I hope you remember effect modifier is one which is only related to outcome, which is not related to the exposure. That is an effect modifier which is only related to outcome. Okay, so remember this point about RCTs, and blinding does not remove confounder, blinding only remove bias. Now next question, they are asking you to choose the false statement. Let's go one by one. Option A say that significance level gives the probability that the rejected null hypothesis is true. Okay, so first we have to know what is significance level. This alpha error, probability of alpha error is known as type 1 error. So probability of alpha error is type 1 error. Okay, so type 1 error and alpha error are almost same, and this alpha error is what we write as significance level. So alpha error is same as significance level, you can say like that. And we all know, already we have discussed that alpha error and p value have same meaning. Okay, so which of the following is correct or wrong? First thing, significance level gives the probability that the rejected null hypothesis is true. So let's first understand alpha error or significance level in terms of null hypothesis. Alpha error simply means rejecting null hypothesis when true. Rejecting null hypothesis, HO, null hypothesis when true. What does it mean? It means that, it's a very simple example, can understand it, can explain it. Suppose there is a friend of mine, let's say Gaurav, is examining my abdomen, and there is nothing significant in my abdomen. It is just gas and food and a fat. So it means here null hypothesis is true because there is nothing significant. And a null hypothesis says that new drug is same as old drug. There is nothing significant. That is null hypothesis. So in my case, null hypothesis is true because there is nothing significant. But suppose Gaurav auscultated, Dr. Gaurav auscultated me and said, no, you are pregnant. Congratulations. So what Gaurav is doing here? He is rejecting null hypothesis when true. That is alpha error. Take another example, and a coronil example, Baba Ramdev. What Baba Ramdev is saying? Baba Ramdev is saying that coronil can treat corona. So in reality, when the research of coronil was done, it was done on asymptomatic patient, those who did not had fever. So coronil research was never done on fever cases. So in reality, coronil is something which is nil, which is not useful in treating, and it can prevent by immunity booster and everything. It can help in immunity boosting, but it cannot treat corona. So here null hypothesis is true, coronil is null, 0. But Baba Ramdev rejected null hypothesis and said that my drug can treat corona. So he is doing alpha error, he is doing acting over smartly. So alpha error or significance means rejecting HO when true. I hope it is very clear to you. So A line is saying significance level gives the probability that the rejected null hypothesis is true. Yes, so that is what is alpha error. Rejected null hypothesis is true. That is alpha error. That is what Dr. Gaurav and Baba Ramdev both are doing. So correct answer is A. We already know it. Okay, that rejected null hypothesis is true. That is significance level. Now let's go one by one other option also and see what does they mean. Significance level gives the probability that the accepted null hypothesis is false. So if rejecting null hypothesis when true is alpha error, remember not rejecting null hypothesis when false, not rejecting HO when false, this is beta error. And what is, in general word, what is beta error? Beta error means underestimating yourself, underestimating your drug or your invention. And now suppose you find a new drug and you said it is useless, that is beta error. So beta error means not rejecting HO when false. Please remember this line. So line B is definitely for beta error. Then option C, significance level is equivalent to type 1 error. So this line is true because significance level means alpha error means type 1 error almost. Line D, significance level gives the percentage of data outside the normal range. Significance level means how many of the data is outside the normal range. There is something significant, that is significance level. Okay, so option C, option D and option A are correct. So which one is false statement? Option B is false statement, because probability that the accepted null hypothesis is false, that is beta error. Okay, try to remember these two lines. Rejecting HO when true is alpha, not rejecting or accepting HO when false, that is beta. So line 2 was the B was the correct answer because it is wrong. Now what does this line means? Significance level gives the percentage of data outside the normal range. Whatever is outside the normal range, that is significant. That's what it's trying to say. So for that we can go through this interesting diagram which I have calculated. This is the range which is accepted. So if your result is coming within the accepted range, it means your result is not significant. If your result is coming outside this is the accepted range, this is what people think, what scientists think, that if the result will come in this part, then my drug is not different than previous drug. So if the result is coming within the accepted range, the drug is not significant. But if the result is outside the accepted range, then the drug is significant. So significance level means this part. Significance level means this part, the part which is outside the normal range. Then we will reject the null hypothesis and then the data is significant. So significance level or alpha level talks about this part in which we reject the null hypothesis. So this is the significance level outside the expected range. One more thing you can get from this diagram, that if relative risk is 1, what does 1 relative risk means? Relative risk once means no association. Okay, so if we have a confidence interval and in the range of confidence interval 1 comes, it means that data is non-significant. Okay, remember, if confidence interval range include odds ratio or relative risk equal to 1, it means data is non-significant. It means data is null, not useful. Okay, it means non-significant data. Okay, so this is an important concept which is being asked in different way. Please go through it. Now next question is very 2-3 questions is only left. That this is a big type of question. They did a RCT between Congreller versus clopidogrel to know which one is producing better result on percutaneous coronary intervention, and they did the research in which the result came odds ratio 0.65. So remember, odds ratio 0.65 means 35% decrease. Okay, इसमें 35% decrease in Congreller versus clopidogrel. 35% decrease in Congreller as compared to clopidogrel. That simply means this thing. And confidence interval is 0.55 to 0.83. So you can see here confidence interval does not include 1. Because it does not include 1, so this confidence interval range is, what is significant or non-significant? It is significant because it does not include 1. Second thing is that p-value is definitely less than 0.05. So it also suggests that the data is significant. So the data is significant and there is 35% decrease. Okay, so line 1 is saying 35% less. Okay, and the result is not significant. So if they are saying not significant, this is a wrong statement. Line B is saying the result was significant, so B can be correct. We have to see the whole statement. Okay, C is saying not significant, so C is also wrong. Let's come to the last D. D is again saying significant, so we have to choose out of B and D. Let's see what does B say. B is saying that 48-hour Cangrelor the new drug, Cangrelor drug, have 35% less than the clopidogrel. Okay, so Cangrelor versus clopidogrel we are testing, originally Cangrelor versus clopidogrel. So Cangrelor is 35% less than clopidogrel. So this line which is in the statement line B is definitely correct, because here you can see they are saying Cangrelor is 35% less than clopidogrel, and in option D they are saying clopidogrel is 35% less than Cangrelor. No, if we are testing it A versus B, it means A reduces the risk. When the odds ratio is coming 0.65, it means A is 35% less as compared to B. And what is A here? A is Cangrelor, and what is B here? B is clopidogrel. So Cangrelor is 35% less as compared to clopidogrel. Okay, that's what we get from this data, and it is significant. Let's come to next question, which is a matching question, and they are asking this question: which is multiple, which is component, which is histogram, which is bar chart. So of course multiple bar chart is something like this, which has multiple bars in it. For example, if I want to know the, let's say it is Maharashtra and it is Delhi, and I want to know that how many were the cases and out of which how many died. So cases I am representing like this, died here, then again cases here and died here, let's say, it's not the same. Delhi have comparatively less, but anyway. So this type of diagram which is representing two things, this is a multiple bar diagram. This is a multiple bar diagram. So A is 2, and this type in which within one thing we represent two things, that is component bar diagram. Okay, component means one above another. For example, if we are representing the number of cases and the death like this, then it will become component. This is component bar diagram. Okay, now this third one is a histogram, because in a histogram we have continuous data, like number is a continuous data, and there is no gap in histogram. And suppose I am representing cases of Japanese encephalitis in India, and I am writing the data and I am representing it like this, let's say 2016, 2017, 2018, then in the 19 no cases reported, and then let's say it is 2019 to 20 no cases reported, then 21, let's say 18, 17. So here you can say that there is a gap and this is not a histogram, but no, it is representing that there is no death reported in 2019 to 2020. This data which is vacant, it is also representing that there is no death. Okay, there is no death in this part. So remember, in histogram there is no actual gap. But when I was representing Maharashtra and Delhi or football, hockey and things like that, you can see the gap does not represent anything. So this is a component bar diagram, this is a multiple bar diagram, this is a histogram which represent association between two continuous data, and this one is a simple bar diagram because simple bar diagram stands like that. Okay, so A was 2, B was 1, so A2, B1, it means option D is correct. A2, B1, then C3, D4, they are correctly organized. Now let's come to the last question. Identify the organization. This is the logo of UNDP, United Nations Development Program. Okay, UNDP have this logo. Now there are three questions which you have to know which can come. First of all, which organization fund the National TB Elimination Program or RNTCP, which gives money for the drug of TB and the research on TB? The answer is SIDA, Swedish International Development Agency. SIDA give fund for TB program. Which give fund for blindness program? Answer is DANIDA, Danish International Development Agency. DANIDA, if it give fund for blindness program. Now, which organization give fund for sustainable development goal? So for sustainable development goal, fund come from UNDP. Sometime World Bank also fund it, but mainly sustainable development goal get fund from UNDP. Okay, so these three funding question can come. Remember, if they ask question regarding Red Cross logo, so does this logo represent Red Cross? Answer is no. This is the logo of Suraksha Clinic. Okay, Suraksha Clinic, what does it is used for? I hope you all know it is for the treatment of sexually transmitted disease in Suraksha Clinic. And if they ask the logo of Red Cross, this will be completely filled with red. That is the logo of Red Cross. Okay, and I hope you all know that WHO, Red Cross, ILO and UNAIDS, all head office are in Geneva. Okay, then they can ask which organization work for population activity or which organization work to distribute contraceptive and decrease the fertilization rate. Answer is United Nations Fund for Population Activity. UNFPA, it give fund for decreasing contraception, and we all should know that UNFPA, UNDP and UNICEF all have head office in New York. Okay, and this United Nations Child Relief Emergency Fund is working on only maternal and child health nowadays. So if you saw a logo of mother and child, that is UNICEF usually, or the Janani Sishu Suraksha Yojana also have mother and child in the logo. Okay, so these three have organization in New York. I think you know that Food and Agricultural Organization head office is in Rome. World Bank head office is in Washington DC. Okay, and UNAIDS we have already read that UNAIDS is in Geneva. UNESCO have head office in Paris. Okay, so these all organization detail was also asked in recent exams. Please remember it. The SIDA fund for TB program and DANIDA for blindness program. This is the logo of UNDP. So these are the 10 probable questions for INICET, and I really hope that this discussion will be useful for you in the exam. Thank you very much for listening. Hasta la vista. Das vidania. Bye bye.